What is happening in the palliative care arena to provide support for caregivers when people do not have that support network or resources to have paid support? Given the fact that there is so much non-paid caregiver support in the US and Canada, I would imagine that sustaining caregiving is important even from an economic perspective from government.
hmm Yes, huge points here. You know, so as we mentioned, there's something like 45, 50 million informal unpaid caregivers in the US. And that has dramatic, as you can imagine, those same people are trying to hold down jobs, et cetera. And so there's absenteeism, people not able to show up for work. There's this thing called presenteeism where they do show up for work, but are not productive because they're so distracted by their chores and by their work at home. And they're not their chores at home, but that's how they can feel. But that the work, the good, caring, loving work that they have to do at home can be exhausting. So yeah, and there's a huge economic burden to this. There are numbers in the billions, many, many billions, dramatic annual effects on the economy. And so, of course, rightly, why wouldn't we as a society and as a government figure out a way to ease this burden and to normalize this act? So there are those of us who are pushing on the policy front. That is true, whether it's more generous paid leave, et cetera. There are also those of us who are advocating for, there's a thing called CareCorps. A senator from New Mexico had suggested years ago. It's never found its way through Congress, but ways to set up basically an army of home health aides of young people, maybe in exchange for tuition to college or whatever else, would sign up for a year or two of service as a home health aide, as an attendant. We know that the lowest rung on the totem pole of caregiving, home health aides, personal care attendants, certified nursing assistant. This is a very important work, and it's really not very well honored or supported in this country. And a lot of that comes down to policy too. So these are some things at play. These are big, big forces. You make really, really important points here. So meanwhile, as we pressure our legislators, et cetera, and we advocate and vote vociferously, the other thing here is for us to organize and not wait for the government. So each of us can do this these days, setting up little organizations, pods, neighborhood, watches, essentially. How do we in our neighborhood start looking out for each other and to be there for each other? It's going to be increasingly important because more and more of us are not living in the traditional family structure, and isolation is a huge issue. So finding ways to informally and casually unite and organize around novel ways to care for one another. That also needs to happen, and that's not something that any of us needs to wait for, to essentially to check on our neighbors. Then lastly would be, if you are in one of those states that gets Medicaid support here, there are ways to get in-home supportive service paid through Medicaid. To qualify, of course, you have to meet a certain poverty level. So as often in this country, you can get help if you're extremely poor, or you can get plenty of help if you're extremely rich. It's all the folks in the middle that struggle. So yes, ongoing big, big issue.